Hello and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. My name is Andrew Claudio, aka GMAC, and it's time to preview the Knicks matchup on Sunday nights on ESPN against the Philadelphia 76ers and the game on Tuesday night on TNT against the Philadelphia 76ers. These weird baseball series that the NBA has now instituted since the COVID-shortened season. The Knicks will take on the Sixers twice, a division rival that weirdly enough, they didn't play them for the first 35 games or so, and now we will have seen them 4 times in the last 2 months. They are within striking distance with the Sixers. I'm pulling up the standings as we speak. The Knicks currently the 4 seed after a huge win over the Orlando Magic on Friday night at 37-36. And then there's the Sixers, who, I mean, we've talked about it a lot with what the injuries have done to our team, but what injuries have done to their team, sitting at 35-28 on the year, currently tied for the 6th seed as currently as we were recording. And joining me to talk about these two matchups from the very popular Philly Take YouTube channel, RB, my friend, what is good?
Andrew, what's up, man? Appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure. And, both our teams have gone through it recently, but couple big matchups moving forward. And, we're getting to that point in the season where it's like, all right, every game does kind of count for these standings. Sometimes we're like, oh, it's a regular Tuesday night game against so-and-so or a Sunday afternoon. But no, every game counts. And I'm starting to feel it, man, especially with how these teams are kind of moving forward.
So it's interesting you say how we've been feeling it, because maybe you're catching me when the vibes have started to take a turn. And like a week ago, I don't know if you were watching the Knicks Cavs game on Sunday night last week, where I know the NBA had a long slate of national games because it was a national game. And Jalen Brunson pulls up lame 35 seconds into the game. And the emotions at the time were like, oh, so it's over. Like, the season's over. And like, I hope one of the reactions in our group chat was like, I'll sign up right now for he's ready by October. Like, this isn't Jamal Murray and he's out for the whole next season. Right. And I was like, you know what? Let's take a deep breath, take a step back. And pretty much since that moment, there's been a steady incline of the vibes returning in New York, where they end up winning that game against the Cavs on the road without Jalen Brunson and really anybody else, because it was Josh Hart and Deuce McBride and a bunch of guys. Tibbs played 40 plus minutes. Then they get Brunson back for last night's game, and they really had a statement win against a very young Orlando team that they gave up 74 points, right? Yeah. And so the Knicks come into this matchup, or these two matchups, riding a bit of a high, and I know the fan base is feeling it. This now leads to the inverse, where I ask you, I know they just lost to the Pelicans last night, and I know the Grizzlies game is, from what I can tell, the game that a lot of Sixers fans are like, oh, this is the low point. Like, I don't know if it can get any lower, even if they lose going forward. So you tell me, tied for the 6th seed, a very difficult stretch of games coming up. How are the vibes in Philly at the moment?
Well, first of all, I do want to say congrats on a great year so far with the Knicks. I mean, they have played very good ball, and I do hope they stay healthy, honestly. I feel like there's been a ton of injuries the last couple years, especially at like big points in the season where it's like, damn, that team could have been this if only their guy didn't go down with a knee injury. But when it gets to the Sixers, you're absolutely right. The Grizzlies' loss was tough. You blow a 15-point lead in the 4th quarter. The night before, you blew a 14-point lead to the Nets. And I think where Sixer fans are at right now is, it was always, let's stay afloat till Embiid comes back. Everything will be fine when Joel Embiid comes back because he's your anchor, he's your superstar. Now it's kind of shifted to, we have 12 games tough coming up back to back to back. We might fall into the 9 or 10 seed if we don't wake up. So it's almost shifted away from, man, let's just kind of tread water and fly as much as we can until Embiid's here. But now it's like, like reality's starting to hit. You're only 7 games above 500. You could have never imagined this. This is your worst nightmare. It felt like 2 months ago you were locked into the 3 seed, and now you're probably going to be a play-in team. It's very brutal.
So let's start with the immediate right now. To the Knicks fan that's not watching the Sixers on a day-to-day basis, like, I know obviously Embiid's been out for a while. Maxey, the last I saw was that he was cleared for concussion protocol. So going into these two matchups, is Maxey, do you foresee him playing on Sunday night? And then, like, who else is part of the walking wounded that the Knicks fans might not necessarily know of?
Yeah, so Tyrese Maxey right now is still in concussion protocol. He did work out, though, and he looks fine. So in my opinion, it'll be kind of probably a last minute, like, okay, he's good to go, or maybe we'll keep him out for another game. So maybe you'll see him one out of the 2 games, but I can't really predict, especially with the Sixers medical staff. But Tyrese Maxey is kind of an iffy. DeAnthony Melton and Robert Covington will not play. They have turned into what I call ghosts. Like they got injured, and it was one of those injuries where it's kind of in the back of your head, and now they've been out for months. DeAnthony Melton came back. He re-aggravated his injury. He's going to be out for a couple weeks at least. Covington is out. Nicholas Batum feels like he misses every second or third game because he's 35 years old and his legs are, wearing on him. Kyle Lowry, he rests every couple games because he's 37 years old and can't really hold up. So he might miss one out of the 2 games. But those are really the main guys that are going to be out. And obviously Joel Embiid. So the Sixers are kind of just digging anywhere they can get production. I mean, they just brought in a 2-way player, Jeff Doughton Jr. from the G League. He's played okay, but that's where we're at in this season. We're pulling in Jeff Doughton Jr.'s to try to save us for the next really tough stretch.
There's a lot of Knicks fans listening at the moment that can empathize a lot. Like Jacob Toppin, Obi Toppin's little brother, played some significant minutes. We had Charlie Brown Jr. playing games.
Charlie, man.
Yeah.
Sixer legend.
There you go. Sixer legend. So there's some crossover in this matchup. I think the biggest question I have as far as the injuries are concerned, and it has somewhat to do with these 2 games. Like I think the Knicks, because there's a world OG Anunoby plays on Sunday night. Like the latest report out of Knicks practice is that he's cleared. He's been playing 5-on-5, full contact in practice. They're literally just waiting for the medical staff to clear him, and the moment he's cleared, he's back. Now, something I've come to learn this year is there's like probably what the Sixer fan or the Cavs fan or the other fan bases think. Oh, medically cleared means they come back, but they're on like a limit and restriction, right? And then there's a medical staff that knows I'm sending him back to Tom Thibodeau. I have to clear him to be able to play under Tibbs with these ridiculous, at times necessary minute loads that potentially get put onto you. So like I assume Anunoby's going to play one of these games, if not both. So walk me through expectations for the rest of the season for the Sixers, if you don't mind. Because I know like the conversations I've had with the rights to Ricky Sanchez guys, and it's a lot has been like you said, just tread water until Embiid gets back, and then Maxey goes down, and then other guys go down. And you mentioned being locked into the 3 seed for a while. They were 29-13 when the losing started, and I think it's 6-15 in their last 21 games. Yep. So like, is there like a bar that you're like, as long as it doesn't go below this, I'll be okay? Or it's just like, even if it is day one of the play-in, our roster's at least healthy, I'll sign up for that right now?
Well, I think it's always tough when you lose your anchor, you lose your superstar. I mean, what Joel Embiid was doing this season was absolutely incredible. I mean, he was putting up 40 in 3 quarters on a nightly basis. And I mean, maybe I'm a bit biased, but it just goes to show, in my opinion, how he should be MVP every year. I mean, you lose him and look at the difference with this team, even with Tyrese Maxey, and how they were playing. But at the end of the day, man, I think what it comes down to is Philly has always viewed beyond this year as the next step. And people don't want to hear it because we're 10 years into the process and people are frustrated, right? This is the time we want to get past the second round. We want to get to the championship. And it almost feels like we're kind of stepping away a bit farther than closer in some ways. But when it comes down to the Sixers for the rest of the season, you have to hope Joel comes back. I honestly wouldn't be mad if he just kind of rested for the rest of the year, because you look at this team and they have major deficiencies outside of him coming back. Is Joel coming back going to make this team a championship contender right off the rip? Probably not. I mean, Joel has to be playing at that top MVP level, and we're talking about a serious injury. Like, he might not even come back 100%. So then you're starting to risk his personal health. I think the expectation for the rest of the year is try to get into the dance, see what you can do. Nick Nurse is a very good coach. And if you can get there, maybe you can upset somebody in the first round, give yourself some steam and see where it goes. But I would say most of the expectations are crushed. Sixer fans don't even seem to be too interested right now. I mean, they're tuning in, watching 8 to 9 players on a nightly basis, and half of them weren't even on the team to begin the season. So it has been a brutal stretch. It's unfortunate. And I almost don't even have words for what else I can say about this team right now. I can't blame them for losing these games because they're beat up. They're beat up in every way. It's been tough.
So it's very, very rational the way you're processing this. I want to commend you for that. I also know that fan is short for fanatic, and I know that a lot of fans probably aren't as rational as you are at the moment.
No.
Is there any scapegoat? I don't know if anything of this is falling on Nick Nurse. Is anything falling on Morey for maybe the way he handled the deadline? Like, what's the largest outcry from the fan base at the moment?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. People are now starting to direct blame at others where I don't feel it's 100% deserved. Has Nick Nurse coached his top game recently? Probably not. I mean, he's made some tough decisions, but what is he working with? It's kind of like it's hard to, put that blame somewhere where there's nobody to be blamed except for the fact that you're down bad in many ways. But I do think the Daryl Morey criticism is deserved, and I've been a huge Daryl guy. In fact, I've been criticized for it before. But at the deadline, you had a couple main deficiencies, and it's actually why the Sixers are getting beat in most of these games. They don't play much defense on the perimeter. They can't rebound a lick. They needed to add another center, and they didn't do it at the deadline. Now they're trying to sign Kai Jones. That's the desperation point we're at. They needed another big man. They're having troubles in many ways. Yes, they upgraded. They got a really good sharpshooter who I think could be a very good pairing with Joel Embiid if and when he comes back. And they kind of made other lateral moves. They cut some of the dead salary. Not sure if you're aware, but the Sixers are only going to have 3 players on the roster once this season ends. And that could actually be 2. If they don't make it past the first round, they could waive B-Ball Paul with no dead cap. And the only guys on the roster would be Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. So kind of going back to what I said before, it's almost like a looking into the distance type of view. Like this offseason will be the first time Daryl can construct his own team, but I do think he deserves criticism. If Joel Embiid is going to come back, you need to stay afloat, and you didn't do enough to put yourself in position to do that.
Who was the name that Sixers fans were like, why didn't you go out and get blank? And it could be the move that like another team made. Like I know Anunoby to the Sixers was rumored for a while, and then obviously the Knicks pulled the trigger. But maybe it's like a guy that ended up just not being moved at the deadline either. So who's the name that Sixers fans are upset wasn't a Sixer?
Andre Drummond, 110%.
Who was in the building in the past? Yeah,
and that's another reason. I mean, he played pretty well here as a backup, and he's familiar, and obviously people were upset when he got traded. On a separate note, I'm really confused as to why the Bulls feel like they're going to make any noise. I don't know why they didn't trade their pieces while they could have had value, but different story there. Andre Drummond would have been a perfect fit. There were other big men moved. The Sixers needed to go out and get a center, and you'll see in the next couple games, obviously B-Ball Paul is a nice backup center, but the fact of the matter is he's 6'9", and you have him out there trying to play 30 minutes at center. Mo Bamba, and nothing personal against Mo Bamba. I'm actually really impressed with how a 7'1" center has so much trouble rebounding the basketball. Like I've never seen something like it. And, the Sixers just are having lots of trouble in the paint. And that's where you have to attack them to win these games. And that's what teams are doing, man. Easy second chance points and, just battling down inside. I mean, it's really easy against the Sixers right now. And I know I sound negative, but this is where the season has led me to. Every time I try to look for a slimmer of just optimism, we just get hit back into reality. And it's frustrating, man.
So then in the order of how the last couple of years have gone, right? So if you want, I know you said year 10 of the process, and there is that last Brett Brown year that ended in the bubble. And that felt very much like, okay, this run probably is about to end. And then the next year they're a 1 seed, and then I don't have to tell you what happened with Ben Simmons. So with all, and by the way, for the Knicks fans who don't know, B-Ball Paul is Paul Reed. I'm assuming that not every Knicks fan knows him as B-Ball Paul. Like, I don't want to fully make this an off-season podcast, but I guess my question is like, so there's a two-part question here coming. The first one I'll ask is like, how confident are you that the next iteration of this roster will be something that returns them to contender status?
I mean, I think you have, $55 roughly $1 million in cap space coming up. You could probably re-sign Buddy Hield. I think Daryl Morey is going to do what it takes to construct a team around Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. I have no doubt in those guys. And I think Joel staying healthy is the most important factor. And the last 4 or 5 postseasons, he's been dealing with injury, which is very frustrating. And sometimes that comes with the greatness. But I think they'll have a lot of flexibility to make the team better. And I do believe they will. But I understand trying to sell that to the fan base when they're very, very frustrated that we were promised so many draft picks. We were promised winning 4 to 5 years in, and here we are, and it kind of feels like we're taking steps backwards. But we'll finally have the flexibility for once. And one player we didn't talk about, and this is kind of intentional because I've been talking about him so much recently, is Tobias Harris. That contract will finally be gone. I don't even have to explain it. You probably have heard it on the outside, but it has gotten to an all-time low. And that is something you cannot escape, even if Joel comes back. It's just who the guy is, man, at this point. It's frustrating.
That seems to be the punching bag from what I can tell watching Sixers Twitter. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating to hear people say, well, Sixer fans are just trying to blame the next guy on the totem pole. They went from Ben Simmons to Doc Rivers to Tobias Harris. But in reality, these guys aren't performing up to the expectations. So, Philly fans are tough. I agree with that. But we want to win. We want to win. Point blank. Whoever does that, like, for example, Kelly Oubre making $2 million coming in off the bench, going to the basket every single possession, putting up 28 points. Like, give us the effort level. We accept that.
Yeah. Long Island's own Tobias Harris, by the way. So yes. It's a shame to see where he's ended up at this point. The second part, and I really wish I had warned you that this question was coming. I realized I didn't, but I'm sure you assumed going on a Knicks podcast that this may come up. And look, I have heard it from multiple Sixers outlets, like Embiid's not going anywhere. And then I come back to the Knicks world and it's like, we're getting Embiid this summer. And I don't even know, I have no idea what the Knicks are going to do this summer. I know that I've been hearing that superstar trade's going to happen. I know the names that are out there. The question that I have is simply this, the worry level, if you have any, it could be 0%, but on a scale of 1 to 100, what's your concern level that Embiid's like, you know what? We gave it 10 years. Send me elsewhere. You can do a full rebuild. That he's Dame. What's your percentage there?
0%. And
you're actually this is consistent. The highest I've gotten is 3%. So there you go.
Well, I'll tell you just real quick, when it comes to Joel Embiid, if he ever is moved, it will not be his decision. And I really do believe deep down that Joel Embiid is grateful to play the game of basketball. As cliche as it sounds, with what he's been through in his life, and he didn't even start playing till he was 15 years old. You could just tell that he's grateful to be here in the moment. The money, all the fame, it all comes with it. He's just glad to have an opportunity to live here and build a family, et cetera. And, he's grateful for the city of Philadelphia for giving him that shot. And boy, has he been through some crazy, crazy years. But not once has he ever said, I want out. Yes, he'll troll a little bit on Twitter and he'll give you that internet personality side of him. But deep down in his core, I think he wants to be here his whole career. And unless Daryl Morey and the troops say, it's time to move on and get value for him, I think he'll be in Philadelphia for the rest of his career.
So let me get you on the record. 0%. You'd be completely shocked he's on a different team next year.
0%.
Okay. You'd be completely... Go ahead. Sorry.
I would ask you, do you want Joel Embiid? Because, I've had conversations with others and they say, man, the injuries just are too hard to look past. Would you give up 4 first rounders to get Joel Embiid at this point?
I would. I'm not going to call someone crazy that wouldn't, though. That's the only difference. I think the risk is worth the reward because like banners fly forever. You need one healthy postseason that he has an Akeem run. And then that's why like all these, like the Clippers have been through hell the last 4 years. Right. And they win the title this year. It was all worth it. So the state of Philly, if you don't mind if I ask that for a moment, because like I'm a Mets fan too. I'm a Jets fan, so I don't have the animosity Giants fans have for the Eagles. In fact, the Jets beat the Eagles for the first time ever this year, so I was able to actually enjoy a moment of triumph that I had never seen before. But obviously, Knicks Sixers hasn't been the strongest rivalry in the past compared to the other teams in the Atlantic Division. But I know that the Philly sports fan is a very similar animal to what to what New York can be. And lately just take the temperature for me and tell I guess New Yorkers listening, like, is there a frustration that we've been so close so recently that it's like the Phillies make the World Series and come up short? The Phillies get back to the NLCS, have game 6 and 7 at home and come up short. Obviously, the Eagles losing the Super Bowl. I know it's probably mean even going through all of it. And then obviously the what ifs with Embiid. Like, is there a consternation in the city at the moment that, my goodness, like we went through all this close to winning and came up short?
It is literally the never-ending cycle of Philadelphia in the sports. Never get too high and never get too low. Every couple years, teams will start clicking. It's feeling like, here we go. Like teams are getting ready to make a run. And then, like you said, out of nowhere, the Phillies choke to the Diamondbacks. The Eagles have a historic collapse after 10-1. And the 76ers, can't seem to get over the hump. A couple years ago, or actually last year, nobody was even interested in the Flyers. Who are the Flyers? And right now, you could say they're maybe the most likable team over the last couple months in the city. Not because they're talented, but because they're going out there and they're kind of overperforming in a way and exceeding expectations. Not that I'm a hockey guru, but, people are starting to go to more Flyers games. And it's just the never-ending cycle of don't get too high and don't get too low. Because one season could be great. You're making the championship, you're there. And then the next season, you have to start all over. And you have to find a way to retool. And I think Philly fans are on edge right now. I think they know there's talent on these teams. But it's time to, put your money where your mouth is and make it happen.
Yeah, I get the sense that from my perspective, because I root for the bad New York teams. I go Mets, Jets, and like Knicks. I guess technically that's a universal praise for the Knicks. I guess I don't root for the hockey team that isn't the popular one. I know there's Islander fans out there, but I'm a Ranger fan, right? And like we get both sides of it as Knicks fans because like nobody cares about the Nets. So it's like all of us are Knicks fans, but we also have Jets and Mets expectations, which is like the shoe's going to drop eventually. And then there's Yankee and Giant expectations where it's like, well, like what regular season wins aren't enough. I must win a championship every year. And then I go to Philly and it's like all of that in one bowl of soup. And it's like, I'm the best. Don't fuck with Philly. Oh my gosh, we're going to lose again. And it's like this weird paranoid confidence that I've always like admired from afar and obviously combated in the past, obviously in Mets Phillies battles. It's why going into this matchup, it's so like I have no animosity against Philly going into these two games. There's really not been many. I've actually have to look up how many Knicks Sixers playoff matchups there have been in the past. And obviously like the Embiid thing, if it ever became a thing, would be a thing, but I mean, I'll wait for that to happen. Like going into this matchup, you mentioned it, the complacency that may be existing within the fan base. Is it just like I'll settle for just a win, regardless of whether it's against the Knicks? There's no animosity coming from you that it being New York.
Not at all, and I think Philly and New York fans are more similar than we think. When it comes to the passion, the history, the tough, brutal losses. Both of our teams are just trying to get over the hump at the end of the day. And I think, we may hate each other at some points, but it's the respect level because New York fans bring that energy the same way the Sixers and Eagles fans bring that energy. You just have to respect it at a certain point. I think it's way better than not caring at all, which does exist in some of these fan bases, why their teams aren't talked about. Like the Cleveland Cavaliers are the number 2 seed, but I don't see them really get much attention. I don't like if I watch a Cavs game, I don't see the fans going crazy. Same thing with Orlando, who's been on a heater recently. And it's kind of just like, yeah, they're doing good, but the Knicks, the Knicks could be the 10 seed and their fans are going to get riled up every single night. And I just, from afar, I respect that as a competitor.
Dog, the Knicks were the 11 seed 2 years ago and let Obi Toppin score 40 points in the last game of the year, and let that not be the most watched live stream that we do, because it's like, oh, we have a future Hall of Famer at power forward. It's not a shot at Obi, Knicks fans watching. It's literally just what happened that night. Okay. So couple hot button issues or hot button questions for you. So I asked you ahead of time. I gave you the rundown about like the teams you'd be afraid of to face first round. I get that it's a complicated question because, and we're excluding Boston. Like we'll just take that out of this unless you want to include Boston. But like, give me your top 3 teams that you like are most afraid to face in the first round.
So it's a tough question because at this point I'm not afraid or excited to see anybody. I'm just trying to get to the dance.
That's why it's tough. It's like I'm asking you this question and I have no idea what version of Philly is going to be there. So it's like I just want to play the first round.
Exactly. To maybe some surprise, I think the Knicks are near the top of that list because if they're healthy, and we'll probably get into this, I mean, I view the Knicks as a legit competitor and contender. I don't know if they can beat Boston, but they're damn good. And the Knicks have had a really good season. I don't want to play Miami ever, like again, while Jimmy Butler is in Miami, because this guy, as you probably know, just takes things personal. And he will never let it go that Philadelphia allowed him to walk. And people will go back and forth all day about this. But fact of the matter is, if you really wanted to keep him, you could have. And we had the whole Tobias Harris over me thing. And, Jimmy's just a tough playoff player. And I have the utmost respect for him. And Spo is the best coach in the league. I do not want to play Miami whatsoever. And I think for the third team, I would go with Milwaukee just because I would not be able to bear losing to Doc Rivers in the first round. And I could see them like going on a 4-1 series or a 4-0 sweep, and we will never hear the end of it. So outside of Boston, I would have to go with those 3.
Does it annoy you that right now that's the 3-6 Bucks Sixers?
Yeah, it does annoy me. And I can kind of see it playing out that way. And it is frustrating. Also, I think Giannis has maybe the worst whistle in NBA history playing against him. It's almost impossible to defend. So if Joel Embiid is not 100% healthy, what do you do?
In multiple pods that I've asked this question, the Giannis question comes up, and it's solely like because he's going to play football and they're going to give him a whistle every time. Now,
absolutely.
Knicks haven't played the Bucks yet in the playoffs, and weirdly enough, Giannis hasn't been there hasn't been a matchup recently where the Knicks just haven't been able to stop Giannis. He's played well, but in the Knicks Bucks matchups lately, it's been their shooting that's just been, they hit 25 threes tonight. I guess that's why we're going to lose. Oh, they didn't? Oh, we have a chance to win. And guess what? We did on Christmas Day. I guess if we could now transition, you called the Knicks a contender, and I'm not even sure. Look, the Boston of it all is the biggest question. And I think I'm curious to see if they played a 2-3 matchup or a second round matchup against the Bucks, what that would look like. But if you want to, I like to give the floor over to my guest at a certain point and say any questions or thoughts you have about the Knicks this season from afar. What do you think about the year that they've had?
Yeah, and not to really contradict myself, but the reason I think the Knicks actually could make the conference finals is because of the Bucks, and I can assure you that based on my professional opinion, not that it's professional at all, that Doc Rivers is going to choke in the playoffs. And it's leading up to that. I could see it happening. I think if the Knicks are fully healthy, they can get to the conference finals. That's a big if for sure. And maybe I have a bit of a soft spot because I'm a Nova fan, diehard Nova fan. And I love Brunson. I love Hart, even Chenzo. They might as well complete it, by the way, and bring Mikal Bridges over.
A lot of Knicks fans agree with you.
Yeah. But man, the Knicks they're fast. They can play up tempo. They can shoot well, and they just have a lot of killers on their team. And I think that kind of stems back from Villanova and the way that Jay Wright kind of prepared some of these guys. But the Knicks are not afraid to get dirty, man. And they're ready to go out there and battle against any team. They're going to make it a series regardless. I have a couple questions about the Knicks in terms of the big man. Like, how confident are you with Isaiah Hartenstein. I know is Mitchell Robinson out for the season? I know he was injured.
So he had surgery on his ankle, and then they applied for, and it was like a 2-month injury, right? Then they applied for a disabled player exception, which only gets granted if a guy is out for the year, which told us, oh, Mitch is out for the year. Then it got denied because there was optimism he'd come back. He's currently like on the court doing workouts. He hasn't been cleared for contact. My guess, and again, not a doctor, this is my unprofessional opinion. That's in April, and he's a backup return if he is to return. Hartenstein has dealt with an Achilles injury for the better half of a month and a half. This is where you love all the things Tibbs does for you, but he went a little bit too crazy using his center, like playing him entire second halves. And Hartenstein, who was a backup for most of his career, now had like 40-minute workloads that led to an Achilles injury that he's been managing. Now they've stuck to a minutes restriction. He's also, not going full speed. And honestly, Friday night was the first time you actually saw a glimpse of the borderline defensive, I wouldn't say defensive player of the year, but like all defense guy that we saw for 2 months. If he can get back to that, and you put him next to Anunoby, and there's lineups with him and Josh Hart, and you get your full complement of guys back, I'm very confident in the center rotation. It's like if Mitch comes back and he's your backup center, that's 48 minutes of center play. That's pretty dominant.
Yeah, because that's really my main question, when it comes to the big man depth of the New York Knicks. Like, I know Jericho Sims has kind of been filling some minutes, but overall, like, you need your guys come playoff time, and you need guys that are going to be able to rebound the ball, get out in transition, and like you said, really just hold down the paint defensively, especially when the game starts to slow down a bit. The other question I have, and I don't know your opinions at all on Julius Randle, but in a way, Julius Randle almost reminds me of Tobias Harris. Like, he can put up the numbers in the regular season. He can give you glimmers of hope. Like, he can put on sort of a portrait of like, things are going to be different this year. But in the playoffs, as it's, been seen the last couple of years, he's kind of come up really small. So if Julius Randle comes back and he's healthy, do you think this is the year he can help get this team over the top? Do you think they should limit him? Where's your thoughts on Julius Randle right now?
So, two things. First of all, I understand the Julius to Tobias comp as far as like the regular season versus postseason, the fan base treatment of him to an extent. Yeah. Where I'd have to push back just a tad and just be like, Julius has made 2 All-NBA teams. Like, he's made 3 All-Star teams. Like, this isn't even good stats, bad team guy. They've won a ton with Julius Randle here. And then the playoffs happen. And it's why the second thing, not only is this like a fair question or even a good question, RB, it's the question about the Knicks and their ceiling. And like, when he comes back, how limited is he? How back to 100% is he? He's not the shooter that he was last year, or at least the willing shooter that he was last year. I will say his circumstances every single postseason have changed, in that the first year it was like Julius and the Randlettes, like nobody else was a focal point on that offense. And the Hawks just loaded up on like, let's just stop Julius Randle. And it caused the Knicks to lose that series in 5. Last year, the ankle injury happens 5 games left in the season, and he's clearly hobbled the rest of the series. But like, that team, like, nobody was really shooting well outside of Jalen Brunson and RJ Barrett during the playoffs, right? And then this year, it's going to be the best version of the Knicks that exists. So if he could come back and let's say he's 75% of himself and just like bring the gravity and create some open looks for guys on double teams, and like, you're putting Jalen Brunson, DiVincenzo, OG Anunoby, 40% 3-point shooters around him. Like, this is the year to actually test. Like, okay, we've changed the surroundings around you 3 different times. I do think there are going to be Knicks fans, myself potentially even included, that will give him a pass. Like, he is playing injured. You have to take that in context. But at a certain point, like, 3 times is a trend. And I don't even know like what the move is. I know that that's been the spot. A lot of Knicks fans have said that's the position you're eventually going to have to upgrade. There's a movement for like, go get Cat, go get Mikal Bridges, go get Lauri Markkanen, like a 4 that can shoot potentially. But I like it's the question for the Knicks at the moment, because they weren't good when they didn't trade him last year, and there was really no like thought to trade him either. It was like, okay, like we'll go through another great regular season with Julius and then see if he does it in the postseason. It's, you know, who you mentioned the Bulls before, like you're surprised they didn't blow it up. He's very much DeMar DeRozan. Like he could potentially be used in the trade that makes a team a contender, but in the meantime, we're going through the years where you fall just this short in the playoffs with some pretty great regular seasons. So, you know, we'll see if we get an answer to that this year.
So do you think he's been fairly uncriticized or unfairly criticized? I mean,
no, because I do think there are some people that just like, I don't know. Do you watch the Dan Le Batard show at all? Do you pay attention to that show at all?
I did back then.
Okay, so the character Stugatz that is like a parody of sports talk radio. The whole thing of like do it in the postseason. That's a lot of Knicks fans. Like the first year, my goodness, he was a hero to so many people, and like myself included. Like a lot of us coming out of the pandemic, I'm sure yourself included, we're like, I'm just looking to enjoy something at the moment. And Knicks fans came out of the pandemic and 20 years of nothing, right? And like this 2-year stretch of Melo that was fun. But other than that, it was like, my goodness, I'd love to enjoy something. And he gave us a 4 seed. Like they hosted a playoff series, and like he was the guy. Then the next year, he like is giving a thumbs down to the middle to the entire fan base. And you know, there was a rocky relationship with Knicks fans. Last year spun things in the right direction, I thought, and he earned a lot of respect back. And then this year, it started off rocky, and then like the big trade happened, and like, he was playing outstanding when at the time of the trade too, which is the like at the time of the injury that he had, which probably stinks the most. There are some Knicks fans that are able to be like, I'm just enjoying the fact that like he's good stats, good team guy. Like the rankings he's gonna find himself in Knicks history. Like I do these trivia segments with some of our patrons, and it's like for the 21st century, it's Carmelo Anthony and Julius Randle. Like every single category is like Carmelo Anthony, Julius Randle, and like there's a gap, but like it's still like he's in the second guy in all of these categories. So I would say I can't fault anybody that's like do it in the playoffs. I do think we have to appreciate some of the regular season performances that we just haven't seen that have made this franchise be really irrelevant over the last 20 years. And he's helped raise that floor, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think what it comes down to at the end of the day is it's always, what have you done for me lately? You know, so people are only going to remember the last game or the last series. You know, if they go to the playoffs and he plays great, you know, he's a savior. And if they kind of flub out and, you know, he has trouble, then it's going to be, well, trade him, get him out of here. And you got to love the highs and lows of the game, man. It's, to me, it's the best league because there's so much crazy, you know, storylines and news stuff going on. And it's never a dry period, no matter what. There's always something, you know, and it's always like that with these fan bases too.
Yeah, I'm sure you've gone through the roller coaster too with these seasons. I know the Ben Simmons thing. I mean, I don't want to. I guess I'll ask a Ben Simmons questions. Like seeing what's now become of his career, that like it may not be much longer. With him entering the offseason with, I don't know who's going to take a swing at Ben Simmons. I know the odds went out that Minnesota might take a swing, but like the guys played. I don't even know what the number is. It's just like a very low number of games since that
57 games since the Hawks thing, I think they said, or over the last couple years or whatever it was, like really nothing.
So that's like 3 seasons that he's played 57 games. Like,
yeah,
as someone who saw his team draft Ben Simmons 1 overall, went like he was one of the prizes of the process. Like, what is your vantage point of all this?
It's sad. And man, I mean, I could go on all day about Ben Simmons. I've, unfortunately become to be known as a Ben Simmons hater, but I view myself as more of like, it is what it is. Like, and that's a famous quote from Ben Simmons after Game 7 when he, went out there and folded. But, it is sad because I really thought when Ben was drafted that he was going to be that next guy. All the comparisons, everything, but unfortunately to me, he just doesn't have the drive. And now after he sat out that entire year and tried to make a statement, what he didn't realize was the ramifications on your body, and now he's just dealing with injury after injury, and he's getting paid $40 million a year to play 15 games. And I agree with you. I don't know who's going to take a stab at him. I don't think anybody wants to, especially for that price point. So we may be seeing the nearing of a Ben Simmons retirement, and it might go down as one of the craziest stories of all time in sports history.
Yeah, you look at, like, I obviously just did a Magic pod for the game on Friday, and I hear, like, it was a nice story seeing what Fultz turned his career into. And Magic fans are ready to move on from the Markelle Fultz experience, but that's a guy that's going to get a next contract. And I'm wondering who's going to be the team that allows Ben Simmons to do that, because I think that's what he's going to have to do. Now, the tough thing to go from max player to, like, just give me a contract is going to be a transition that I'm wondering if he's willing to make. Yeah, I mean, we just did a Patreon pod. We went through all the greatest injury what ifs, and Ben Simmons is like in the top 11 or 12 of like what might his career have been. And like, to your point, it's there's clearly a mental aspect of his career decline that you just don't know how to quantify and really work through. So, we'll see what happens there.
I would say as far away from Ben Simmons, if I was an NBA GM, the physical standpoint is not there. The mental aspect is not there. As these injuries continue to take a toll, I don't see him really being a player. I mean, what does he bring to the team? Like,
yeah.
If I'm evaluating, obviously he doesn't have much of an offensive game, and, defense used to be his strong standpoint, but it's hard for him to even do that now based on his physical limitations. So one of the craziest stories ever. And to your point about Fultz, like, I'll always give him credit. A lot of fans were frustrated, but that's what I mean, man. If you go out there and you try, and seeing how he, came back from, again, this always happens with the Sixers, the weirdest stories ever. Like a month before the season, he has some type of shoulder injury and, he can't shoot anymore. But look at what he's been able to do, right? Good players find a way. And when you're limited, when your back's against the wall, what are you going to do to survive? What are you going to do to kind of transform your career? And that's what Fultz did. And I actually am proud of him, for even being able to sustain himself as long as he has.
So last question before I let you get out of here. I mentioned on the rundown the Mount Rushmore of Rivals. I've done this with everybody. It's the last question I usually ask my guests, because like here in New York, we have our rivalries, like New York, Boston, of course, like the Phillies and the Mets have had their rivalries in the past. And, in the NBA, we have the teams that we look forward to the most on the schedule. And I'm curious, in your opinion, who are the 4 teams that you would put on your personal, not like maybe the rest of the fan base feels differently, the 4 teams you look forward to playing the most because you hate them the most on the NBA schedule?
Well, number 1 on that list has to be Boston. Every single time, it's always an adventure, and I can't stand them and their success. It frustrates me. It pisses me off. Boston's got to be up there. Miami has to be up there as well, especially since the Jimmy Butler tenure kind of took over. They always play the Sixers hard, and it's just frustrating playing against Spo. He's a mastermind. Number 3, I would have to go with Toronto, and this used to be more of a Nick Nurse type of thing, but obviously now I think he's on the good side. But Toronto, they play a style of basketball, and they're just very pesky. They're going to be up in your face, always just they're just annoying. They're like the little kids that just never leave you alone. Like you're walking and they just nagging.
Even this version, like this RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, Scotty Barnes version,
not as much. But I'm going off my personal recent history, and there's been some unfortunate memories with the Toronto Raptors, thanks to Nick Nurse. And for 5 years, every time playing them, it was annoying. It was like, you're the big bully, but the little kid just finds a way to like piss you off a little bit. Can
I ask you a very mean question?
Go ahead.
Where does the Kawhi shot rank in like your personal, like go outside of basketball, your personal sports heartbreak?
Oh, man.
I'll give you mine too. But like, where does that rank for you?
Might be number 1.
Might be 1. Okay.
There's been a lot, but that might be number 1 or 2, in my opinion, because I really felt that was the year that the Sixers could have won the championship or at least gotten over the hump. Milwaukee would have been an interesting series, but Golden State was banged up. I really thought that was the avenue to kind of getting where you want to go, and you got farther away as time went on.
Yeah, I was curious if it would end up being one, or if it, like, I guess the Eagles 2 years ago losing in the Super Bowl, because you had won already recently, the sting wasn't as hard, right?
Yeah, that was certainly up there, but that's probably a top 5 moment for me. But like you said, we did win recently, and you're going up against the greatest of all time, who's just superior and greatest talent. I'll add that.
Well, so I just realized, which one are you talking about, Mahomes or Brady? Because you beat Brady, you lost the Mahomes. So which GOAT are you talking about?
I'm talking about Patrick Mahomes. Just off the talent perspective, I think he's the greatest quarterback. Obviously, hasn't done it enough yet. Like, he's still young in a sense, but we saw it in this Super Bowl this past year. I mean, they were down to their last play. You give him an opportunity, he's going to make it happen. So
RB, I'm with you. I think Mahomes is the best. So I do 2 different classifications. There's the BOAT and the GOAT. Like, GOAT implies accomplished. Like, right. We know the totality of your career, and that's why Brady probably has that title. Sure. The best I've ever seen do it, which is where BOAT comes in, is Pat Mahomes, which is why I think why the LeBron MJ debate has always been had very unintelligently. Like, I think Michael Jordan, no one will exceed what he's accomplished in the league and the peak of what he was able to do in the mid 90s. I think LeBron might be the best I've ever seen to do it. And, there are other guys that I'd put in the best category just based off of subjectivity. All right. So I derailed you on your third Mount Rushmore. Who's your fourth?
Ooh, so we got Boston, we got Toronto, Miami. Man, I don't know. At this point, maybe Denver, just with all of the criticism, warranted, unwarranted, but more of just the drama that comes with playing Denver. They're a very good team. I have to give them their props, but just with all the noise that comes with it at this point, it's frustrating. I mean, everybody has their opinions about whether Joel Embiid ducks Denver and this and that. Fact of the matter is, all these players are great. These teams are great. Let's enjoy it. Let's appreciate it. And, let's enjoy the game.
Yeah.
Where I'm at.
Yeah. I think we were talking about this during the playoffs last year. Like, if you were to build a team to stop Denver, and my thought was probably Philly. Like, they're probably built perfectly, like a healthy Embiid against Jokic for 7 games. That I kind of thought we were robbed of that last year with, the way the Sixers season ended. But I guess we'll see if the Sixers can turn things around and rebuild things back up to create we need to see it at this point. I think you'll agree with me. Like, just as an NBA fan, 7 games of Jokic and Embiid would just be good for the sport. Maybe not good for both fan bases, but good for the sport.
Absolutely. And as much as people hate Joel Embiid, look at the career trajectory of Giannis, right? Like, the failures that led up to the ultimate success. Look at Jokic, the failures that led up to the ultimate success. And I liked what you said earlier about, kind of like one great postseason run will kind of make you forget about the rest of the misery, right? And I think Joel Embiid getting to that pinnacle would just be great for the sport. Like, with everything he's had to overcome, I think just as a basketball fan, people would start to appreciate him more than I think they do. And I think he deserves to be appreciated. But the way to get back to that is exactly what you just said. You have to build like Denver. I think that's how you achieve success in modern day roster building. You can't go out and be too top heavy. They have the perfect complementary pieces around their stars. They have the 3-and-D guys, the tough, gritty rebounder, just solid vets. That's what you need. And I think that's how the Sixers and the Knicks, et cetera, get to that point. They have to go to Denver. They figured it out.
Well, I'm looking forward to a potential Sixer. Well, I said Embiid Jokic. I didn't see what team Embiid would be on, RB. So we'll see. I'm joking.
There you go. There you go. Just add more onto my misery.
Listen, if that ever were to happen, I'm not sure. Like, Embiid becomes public enemy number 1, right?
100%. Man, he would get booed in his first game back, and then we'd cheer for him. But Man, that would be crazy. If he did leave, New York would be a good spot just because he's in the limelight. Like he's there. Go do it on one of the biggest stages. So we'll see. One final question I have for you.
Yeah,
How
of course.
far do you think the Knicks are going this season? If you had to predict, are they a conference finals team?
I think that's their ceiling. Can I give you a cop-out answer?
Sure.
So we do a thing called Claudio Casino where I just make up fake betting lines before the season. And the question I asked before the season was over under 4.5 playoff wins. And all three of us took the over. And I think if you were to give me like that bet again today, or maybe even to go like 6.5 playoff wins, which is a game 7 in the second round, right? I think I'd still take the over. I think they can force a 7th game against against Milwaukee. I will say a healthy version of the Knicks. I'm really only scared of 2 teams in the conference. Like they've thoroughly owned the Cavs at this point, and it's like surprising how like the game of this past Sunday where the Knicks like legit punked the Cavs. Like Josh Hart grabbing Mitchell's chain, I think has a lot that's gonna like that matters. Like whether it has anything to do with on the court stuff, like he had a step back 3 and like grabbed his chain. It was like a playful thing, but like, yeah, I'm gonna hit a big 3 in your building and then I'm gonna grab your chain. Like this is play. Like I'm toying with you, and we're missing 3 of our best players.
Yeah.
So
you need guys like that on a team. I really believe in order to have like that DNA when it comes to playoff time, like you need that toughness. So I think the Knicks are built really well. And I think their ownership finally showed that we're serious. Like the moves that have been made, the Knicks are stacked, man. I'm excited to see how they do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, I have to be completely honest with you. I can't fully wish you luck because of the New York Philly of it all, but like I wish people that are talented success. So I hope the Sixers are at least interesting, so that way Philly take stays popping and stays interesting for the rest of the season and beyond. Is that cool?
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Before you get out of here, please let the fine folks at home know where they can find you and all your stuff.
Yes, sir, man. You can find me on YouTube, Philly Take with RB, same on Instagram, and you can also find me on Twitter at RB Philly Take. I talk Sixers, NBA, and a bunch of other stuff. So really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for having me on. Good conversation as always. And best of luck these next couple games. And we'll see if the Sixers can muscle out a win or 2.
Man, we'll see. So I, again, appreciate the kind words. I wish you the best of luck after Tuesday's game. I think deep down, you'd co-sign that it's like, I wish you luck not when you're playing against my basketball team.
I just want one win.
You'll take one. And I'm like, we need all the wins we could get at the moment, man. Thank you, RB, sincerely for coming on today's show. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. If you dig the show, head over to iTunes, drop a 5-star rating and a review. If you're watching, please remember to like the video and subscribe. Tune in later tonight when we have our KFS postgame. Benji Ritholtz on the ones in, Benji Ritholtz hosting with producer Kevin, our new producer, on the 1s and 2s. So tune in for that, win or lose. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I'll speak with you soon. Peace.